Good morning, everyone. Yeah, all right. Thanks for coming. 8 a.m. is usually a time of day that I am not seen, but it's Pacific time, so it's really more like 11 a.m. So that works out. That works out well for me. So I'm Rob, and this is probably my favorite talk to give. And yesterday was only the second time I ever got to deliver it. So welcome to third time. Yeah, and I've really got it down now. I had a couple of glitches in my my animations yesterday. That won't happen today. I got it all. Now I've really done it. Cursed myself. How many of you were in the pre-con on Sunday? Okay. All right. Excellent. Thanks for coming. And for the rest of you also, thank you for coming. Gentlemen. Okay, so this is my favorite talk. I think it's the one that I enjoy the most, but I also think that it's probably the most important talk that I can give, or that I have to date, anyway. You get to decide whether you agree with that afterwards, of course. Okay, but I'm going to tell you that I think that. And as the president of a modern analytics firm that's growing quickly, me telling you that, well, at least it's a piece of data, right? It's it's an informed opinion, and you can add that to your memory banks. Now, 10 things. Everyone wants it to be 10. 10 is a nice round number. It's not coincidentally that it's just 10 things that data can help you with. Okay. We just pick 10, right? There are some honorable mentions. If I made the talk again, from scratch next year, I might choose a slightly different 10. But these are 10. That we have found in our practice 10 very important things. As soon as you have 10, you want there to be an 11th. So you sneak in thing number 0. Right? Make it a 0-indexed array. And those of you who are in the pre-con, this will be the only slide that's duplicative of what you saw on Sunday. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, we're buckling in for a repeat of that. Nope, just this one slide, okay? So thing number 0 is, what can you get from these tools? Why, what are these tools good for? And the usual boring stuff. Tremendous efficiency gains, right? Of course, you've heard that kind of thing a million times. So that probably doesn't get you very excited. Reduction in repetitive work, okay, also like blah, blah. And in fact, we make that explicit in the third one, okay? Really dull. And also just kind of, it's an easy thing to say, efficiency gains, right? It's just really the most obvious thing to say about a software suite. So let's change that up. Let's switch to raining money. And that's a little better, okay? And I want to tell you, working in data right now is a really, really great place to be. And you know what? It's not just right now. It was a great place yesterday. It's going to be a great place tomorrow. There's a lot of human happiness that can be derived from using these new tools and adopting them, embracing them, and using them properly. As an individual, as an organization, we like to say that we actually spread happiness. It's weird, like we're a data consulting company, but we spread happiness as we go. Like people smile, and we really get a kick out of that. It makes a big difference in our lives, and in yours. But money is important, right? That's the other way I can really get your attention. So let's talk about a few case studies. Okay, anonymized, sanitized. These are all real. They're all our clients. The first one's a huge company. You absolutely know. You hear them all the time. And at their headquarters out in Southern California, they had spent 18 months on an IT project, a data project, and had kicked off this project 4 separate times with 4 separate software platforms, 4 separate software vendors platforms, and 4 separate consulting organizations. All 4 times it had failed. The one thing that I think made this particular IT director so exceptional was that she was able to stand up and call BS on her own project when she got the sense that it wasn't going to go anywhere. I think that's the rare thing. It's not that they failed 4 times, okay? It's that they didn't keep going on the first one and call it a win, even though it wasn't. Right? So she's a standout. I love this person. I've got a lot of respect for her. It's hard, right? It's really hard to look at everyone and say, you know, that thing that I authorized, it's not working. We're going to do something different. But they had spent 18 months and over, well into 6 figures of money, which is actually, for this company, the small thing, right? The amount of money they spent was the small thing. The amount of time that they had lost on this, the amount of massive productivity, like the actual losses, if you could truly account for them, would run into the millions and millions of dollars on this. And they gave us a chance, okay? Because, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I think this particular client, in fact, they were honest with us. They just didn't see anything to lose trying us out. They kind of looked at the way we talked about things and said, well, we can fire these people immediately. We can get into this, and as soon as my BS detector goes off, they're out the door. So they gave us a shot, and they said, we want you to come out for a week, to get things started. That's what usually happens is that these firms that they would hire, they'd say, the first thing that the firm would say was, okay, we'll send 3 people for 4 weeks and do requirements discovery, 12 human weeks of just writing things down before they ever did any work. Anyway, so they said, we want you to come out for a week. We said, I don't know, a week is a really long time. You sure you want to pay for a week? Maybe we'll just go for 2 days. How do you think about that? And they said, we really think you should come for a week. And they were right. We needed a whole week to finish this project start to finish. Okay? And it wasn't like it was rocket science, truly. It really wasn't. It's just, this is a testament to what this new platform, these tools from Microsoft, under various different names, because Microsoft loves to name the same thing, lots of different things, at the same time and over time, to keep things fun, okay? But this is what this platform can do for you. It's things like this. Okay, so second story. One of our clients had made a change to their business and spent a lot of time and money on making this change. And they did it originally because they thought it would improve their business, right? That's why we do things, right? Not to sabotage. But after about a year and a half of this, that's a good question. Okay, after a year and a half of this, they started to get the sense. For some reason, like I describe it like it's this virus that was going through the organization's leadership going, maybe this is hurting us. Maybe this is cannibalizing the sales of all the really valuable stuff. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe we should reverse it. And in 4 hours, we were able to very conclusively convince them that no, the original change they made was helping. It was helping a lot. It was adding $5 million to their bottom line every year. And they were about to go and spend $3 million for the privilege of losing that $5 million on an ongoing basis. Okay? It shouldn't get any clearer than that, right? Like this thing was positive for them, significantly positive, and they thought it was going the other way. I think this kind of stuff is rampant. I don't think this is particularly exceptional. I think these kinds of crises and decisions are faced on an ongoing basis, and they're not faced properly. We found $14 million one day. Just found it under a rock. We were with a client in an international steel company, and we were on site with them for 2 days. And in the middle of the second day, like early afternoon, we're working on some crunching some data, and this number appeared on the screen, $14 million. And just this silence crept over the room like a blanket. And someone said, if that number is right, and then they just stopped. They didn't want to finish the sentence. I'm like, okay, come on, finish that sentence. That sounds good. And they said, that was $14 million of discounts that they had given to their customers in the previous year in a category where the customers don't perceive or care about discounts. They just threw $14 million out the window, which means that this coming year they could not do that. Okay? So it's not just 14 million, it's 14 million every year until they forget. That was awesome. That was the moment where we're like, if we could charge percentage of money saved. All right, 3 people part-time for a month. 1 person from our company, 2 people from the client. All 3 of us had other jobs. In fact, we didn't even set foot on site for this project. We did this all remotely with them. And all that did, that 1 month project, all that did was make their stock price go up, which I hear is something relevant. That's a number we care about, right? It's a metric, stock price, if you're publicly traded. All right, the last one, and my personal favorite, another one, 1 week, 2 people, 1 person from our company, 1 person from the client. This was a hard week. We were full time for that week. We didn't do anything else. Okay? And this workbook, the client tells us, this is a big company, obviously. They tell us that this project, it started off as a Power Pivot workbook, and now it's morphed into like a Power BI solution and things like that. But it's all the same thing. Okay. Has added $25 million a year to their bottom line, not revenue, but income, margin, whatever you want to call it. And this project is now running, entering its 4th year. So it's closing in on being a $100 million workbook. And most $100 million workbooks you hear about are in the opposite direction. They're the ones that someone made a terrible mistake in traditional Excel, and it cost their company $100 million. Right? This is the other way. Plus $100 million workbook. That doesn't exist until recently. Now, these are the 5 I like to talk about. I mean, obviously, I've picked like 5 really good ones, that drive the point home. But it's not like number 6, number 7, number 8 are really that. They don't fall off that steeply. These sorts of results are typical. The thing that's atypical, the thing that makes these stories so crisp, is that it's really easy for me to convey sort of the precise value of it, right? Like when a company completely remakes their entire data culture and gets a lot smarter and a lot more efficient and a lot more nimble overall, like that might actually result in a greater, in fact it will result in greater returns than what we're seeing here on these 5 stories. It's just that sometimes it's really difficult to quantify how big that number is. The thing that makes these 5 so significant is that I can really put a concrete number on certain things about it. That's why we pick them. All right, and in none of these situations where there's some sort of like grand breakthrough in quantum physics, where we came up with some new algorithm that can't be explained, in linear language. Okay, they're all relatively straightforward. Like in other words, you can easily replicate this kind of success at your organizations. It's not like you need mega multivariable calculus or AI, machine learning, all that kind of stuff that you hear about all the time. A lot of this is just putting in the time, the sweat equity with the right tool set, which didn't exist until very recently. All right, so the mission. What are we going to do? Why this talk? So it's not a tech talk. There'll be no formulas on the screen. Okay, we're not gonna get into that. In other talks that I give, we will, but not in this one. So get the thinking muscles going again. One of the things I like to talk about is that the traditional tools, whether they be traditional business intelligence tools or traditional spreadsheets, they make it so difficult to get things done, just to get things done, okay, that we struggle to deliver the bare minimum on an ongoing basis. That's the state of the world before this stuff. That's the state of the world today. Even though we're dawning of a new era, it's still really, really early. Okay? You can just barely see the glow on the horizon of the sun starting to roll around the edge of the earth. What happens is that we're trying to answer the dumbest questions and get them done, okay? And then suddenly someone comes along and says, okay, that phone booth that you've been trapped in by the tools that you've had your entire career, we just knocked the walls down on that phone booth. You're free, okay? But what we see is that people just stand right on that spot, okay, for the next year. And they're a lot more efficient. They're delivering the things that they delivered yesterday a lot more cleanly, a lot more effectively, and there is big improvement that they can see, okay? But the cool thing, the really amazing thing is that when you start to realize that you can ask better questions, you can form better goals than you used to, and the tools won't let you down. You can actually do them, okay? That's a big deal. And even me, like for the first year or so that I was using these tools, I think I was doing the same thing. I I hadn't let my imagination really explore what would be truly valuable. And that's what this talk is about. Also, it's a communication tool, okay? When it comes time to talk to non-data people, you know, that are other species, you know, it's good to be able to use small words, right? And we're all familiar, I think, with the sort of this, you know, like this phenomenon where some executive has been reading a bunch of articles about data, you know, how hot data is and how important it is to do data, right? And they turn to their organization and say, all right, everyone, go do some data, you know? And then you turn around dutifully and says, right on, we'll go do some data, right? Being able to take it down one level of detail of what we're going to do with data without resorting to jargon or buzz, BS, without having to do that. It's really, really, really valuable. Small words that are true. It's a good thing, okay? So this is going to be, sort of your cheat sheet for communicating value to others. And it's also a cheat sheet for you. This talk, I put a lot of time into the animations and the artwork and all that you'll be seeing. I don't give this to the conference organizer to put on their website, okay? But if you want a PDF version of it, I'm happy to give you that. So drop us a note, okay? And I'll send you a PDF of the 10 things and what they mean, okay? And you can print as many of those as you want, use them forever, okay? But not the source code of the talk, okay? This is more of an application than a static document. Anyway, and then lastly, that's the thing I said before. You've got this great gift. Don't waste it. Don't stand on the phone booth spot now that the walls have come down, okay? All right, let's dive in. You're supposed to, in presentations, put the agenda on the screen. Here you go. They're the 10 things. I'm not going to read them to you, okay, because we're going to be going through them one at a time. But what I will say is this, is that all of them can be very easily done. All of them are very easily achievable with the current wave of Microsoft tools. All of them. And by contrast, none of them were really all that easy to do with any previous tools, no matter what software company built them, including Microsoft's old tools, okay? So it doesn't matter what your organization's currently committed to or previously committed to, there is a tremendous step up available to you. And then lastly, you'll see that these 10 overlap. A lot of the benefits, these individual 10 things, they don't make any sense without deploying the others or utilizing the other thinking, the 10 things at the same time. And I don't think that they pile up in a sort of an adding up sense. I think they multiply each other, okay? So if you can string like 7 of these together in a single project, you're killing it. It's like, bingo or something, okay? All right, so let's go in. Number 1, subdivide and segment for effective action. What does that mean? So let's say you've got some big overall report that reports a metric for your entire organization. This is the whole company. And we're at 31%, folks, of something important. Customer retention, profit margin, I don't care, okay? 31%, really bland number. It's good to have that number, right? It's good to know what the overall number for the organization is, or for the department, or whatever, right? It's good to have that number. Having that number is a hell of a lot better than not having that number. We can all agree on that, yes? The problem is that as soon as the human brain sees this overall number, we immediately, inevitably, unconsciously assume that the underlying reality, if we started, breaking up into pieces underneath, drilling down, we would discover this. Okay? That's what we think. Even the smartest of us. What else can we think? It's the only safe thing to think, right? Based on the overall number. Anything else is just conjecture, making stuff up. And we don't do that, right? So we assume primarily 2 things, that basically everything's about the same in terms of 31%, and also everything is of relatively equal importance. They're all 9 of these squares that are all the same size, right? Okay, well, what we have seen over and over and over again is that reality almost never looks like this. If you truly go and look at it, it looks more something like, let's say, this. all right? All over the map. And no, not everything is of the same importance. And you know, if you think about this for a moment as corresponding to people, because it often does. You know, like if you're breaking this down, let's say by region or product line, whatever, right? There tends to be people very often that correspond to those areas of responsibility. And if you're trying to get that 31% number to go up, what's going to happen if you go to the person who's running this 42% zone? Whoops, be careful not to click. Okay, this one right here, 42%. They're killing it. What if you go to them and tell them, it's time for you to start improving? Okay, they might know the score better than you do. They might know that they're the only one that's doing anything right. And they look at their peers and they can tell much better than you can. They can tell that their peers aren't doing it. Okay, and you're telling them, oh, time to buckle down. Right? Like you can demotivate them, you can run them off, but you also miss the opportunity to ask them what they're doing so well. Maybe we should be replicating that. Tremendous things. And at the same time, you're missing that there's this area that's twice as big, in terms of its bottom line impact, that's well below the overall average. It's the lowest hanging fruit with the highest impact. If you just work on that one area, if you focus right there first and foremost, you could move the overall needle dramatically in a short period of time. And now, because I'm a nerd, okay, I want you to know that the weighted average, the weighted RGB average of the colors on the left equals out to the 31% color on the right, okay? If you mix those paints, right, you'd get the one, okay? So this is a factual representation of the color. I use a spreadsheet, I know it. 4 times this, divided by 9. All right, you get the idea. So the point is, knowing the overall number is great, but when you actually want to take action, I think it's relatively meaningless to try to take action on an overall number. If you're not subdividing it, if you're not breaking it down, right? And this is, you're going to see this over and over again in these 10 things. This is somewhat obvious, right? You could put the word of 2 words, of course, in front of every one of these things. Of course you need to subdivide and segment for effective action. Duh, like none of one's going to argue with that, right? The problem is that the traditional tools make this very difficult. Like the average SQL-driven report, for instance, like an SSRS report or a Crystal report or whatever, right? No, like you can do it, you can make it filterable, but it's not its core competency. It fights you at every turn, okay? The thing about this new tool set, like the Power BI tool set or the Power Pivot, DAX, modeling, all that kind of, whatever you want to call it, because again, Microsoft likes to have lots of names for the same thing. It's just effortless. Like everything you build should be subdivisible with this new tool set. If it's not, you're doing it wrong, okay? Do it right. And that's the end of the talk. Do it right. Okay. Employ fair metrics for an undistorted reality. What's a fair metric? All right, we're going to do a quick repeat after me just to make sure that everyone's awake. I know I'm awake. I ran to the convention center. So repeat after me. Raw numbers like total dollars are often incredibly deceiving. Come on. Yeah. Yes, what a beautiful collective voice you have. All right, one more time. Incredibly deceiving. Okay. Come on. I won't demean you too much more, folks, okay? All right, so they can be distorted in the positive direction or the negative direction, and they almost always are, okay? In terms of what story that they tell you. So what does it mean to have fair metrics? You could also talk about them as apples to apples as opposed to apples to oranges, things like that. So I won't make you do this, okay? Actually, I will make you repeat the bullets. So if you're going to build a dashboard, scorecard, whatever, the names of the metrics you're going to be displaying on that scorecard, there's a general rule, like try to aim for at least half of the metrics to have some word in the name of the metric like this. Okay, I won't make you repeat it. It's early. Okay, per, right? Like something per day, per employee, per blah blah blah, right? Versus, compared to prior year, prior month, category average, budget. Adjusted, like for inflation, seasonality, corrected for seasonality, okay? Indexed. These make sense? Like, when it comes to deciding whether you're doing well or not, whether you should be taking action or not, or whether something's working or not, generally speaking, the raw numbers are really, again, they're just slightly better than not having numbers in our experience. And again, we could put the words "of course" in front of this. Okay, it's just that the old tool sets was very, very, very difficult to it's hard enough to get to the raw dollars. Like, whew, barely made it in time. Got to the raw dollar number, right? So we want undistorted. Think about how silly it is for like raw dollars to always be the first column in like every report. It's weird. So many things can be influencing that number and making you think that it's a good number or a bad number when it's exactly the opposite. It's not just that you can be off by a degree, you can be off by total direction as well. Here's a couple of quick screenshots, right? Here's an example of like, if you look at January versus prior month, December, like in the retail industry, December is a damn good month. So to compare January versus December, it makes January look terrible. But if you correct for seasonality, you can actually see that this particular January was actually pretty good. This happens. Similarly, if you've been, again, sticking with the retail example for a moment because it's easiest for everyone to perceive. If you say, hey, how are our sales this year versus previous year? Like, oh, they're up. Yeah, but didn't we open a bunch of new stores and close a bunch of others? And were the stores that we opened, are they sort of bigger in volume than the stores that we closed? And also, when did we close them? When did we open them during the year? Because that makes a big difference, doesn't it? So the idea of quickly zeroing in on just the stores that were open, for the whole previous year and this entire year, this is so simple to do now. So simple. This one should probably be the first metric in a report rather than like raw dollar growth. Then there's inflation, there's pricing changes, all kinds of things, right? All right, seeing the whole picture in one place. So this happens a lot. In your world, there's a report that's being built, run, delivered, whatever. And of course that report comes from a particular system. That report is like coming from a CRM system or the accounting system or whatever. And that report, it really looks like it does a pretty good job of telling you what's going on in that silo of data. Okay? It actually doesn't, but that's what it purports to do. It doesn't purport to tell you anything about what's going on in other silos of data elsewhere in your organization. And of course, there's lots of reports from all those different corners of the world, and they're all converging on this human being. And for them to gain a picture of what's really going on in their business, they have to use their brain as like a storage depot. They look at one report, say, okay, I get it. That's how things are going over there. They look at this other report. Okay, now, okay, well, how's that compare? Does it paint a picture? I don't know. Hold on, I'll look at this other report. That's a human being acting like a computer. Now, we all know that, first of all, we don't even get to this point, right? When people are inundated with reports, they look at none of them. They claim to, oh yeah, we're looking at those. That's really valuable, thank you. Right? And really, even people who are looking at them aren't looking at them. What they're doing is they're pressing the export button and going into Excel with it. That's the dirty secret, okay? But most people aren't looking at them. Now, it turns out that having a human being act as a computer is an inefficient thing to do because we have actual computers that can serve that role. And when I first started doing this stuff many, many years ago, it seems many years ago at this point, like the first step to doing anything unified was always the responsible thing. First, we have to build the grand unified data warehouse to rule them all, bind them all in darkness, And it never happened. It just never does. Right? You can't keep up with all the relevant information in the organization. Is never going to like magically coalesce in one database, you know, to unify things. It's a good goal, but it's never going to happen. So, and in fact, the $100 million project, you know, the $100 million workbook, most of the data sources that went into that were not in the corporate data warehouse. IT had told them when they asked to have this project executed, they said, yeah, we see why that's really important, and we can get started on it in 18 months. I'm not making that up. That is exactly what they heard. We can start on it in 18 months. And then of course, there'll be another 18 months while they try to get all the data into one place. We didn't need to do that. Remember, we were done in a week, end to end. And it wasn't a prototype, okay? That thing went live, and it made it rain money, provably. It's crazy, right? It seems like I'm telling a fiction, but I'm not. So you can take those reports as exports. You can connect to their underlying systems, and you can have them all meet in a DAX model, right? in a Power Pivot workbook, in a Power BI, whatever they're calling it, a PIBIX file. Okay, you have it meet an SSAS tabular instance. It's all the same thing, you know, you get a very, very different result. Okay, and I'm not even kidding. The $100 million workbook, its chief core innovation is just that it took 9 different silos of data that all were relevant to a single topic, important to a single topic, and switched from delivering hundreds, I'm not even kidding, hundreds of reports per day to individuals. Like a single individual could receive 100+ emails a day of scheduled reports from these different systems. We went from that to a single scorecard with an all-up sort of ranking and color coding and all that kind of stuff of, you know, how they were performing across all these different metrics, and that added $25 million a year to the bottom line. It's crazy, right? Shouldn't be possible. Shouldn't be possible to do something so quote-unquote simple and get that kind of result. But over and over again, just delivering like the right thing simply with these tools is something that hasn't happened before. All right. Driving org-wide behavior change with scorecards. So this level of organization might get a clue that, oh, we need to make this particular metric go up. That's going to save our bacon. That's going to make our, you know, bottom line a lot better. So let's make this metric go up or down, okay, depending upon what kind of metric it is. The problem is that none of them can actually, they don't actually do the things, okay? The things that actually happen, like the operational things, happen down here. And you know, the example I gave, you know, one of the examples I gave was like, hey, we're thinking about making that big strategic change to our business. We're going to reverse the decision we made a year and a half ago and undo it. That's an example of a very crisp, single, high-level decision that's important to get right. And there's a lot of those, okay? But there's also just as many cases where when you want to make an improvement, it's actually thousands of people, hundreds of people, maybe even dozens of people, right? Okay, every day making a bunch of individual decisions slightly better. You know, that is the kind of thing that's really hard to achieve, even if you know you need to make like customer satisfaction go up, right? Well, you've got maybe thousands of employees involved in touch points with customer satisfaction, and how do you get them to change? How do you can't just will it. You can't just go give a speech to the company and say, really important. I mean, we try that, right? We do. But you know, sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't. So this is why scorecards, I think, are at the heart of some of our most successful case studies. Because we help people move the needle, right? So here's some heavily redacted, anonymized pictures of production scorecards, okay? And these are things that, you know, significantly move the needle. These two in particular are very uniquely Excel type of shapes. But you can do things similar to this in Power BI, this card view. It's just that Excel allows you a degree of control over layout when it comes to scorecard design that still makes Excel a very strong candidate for scorecarding. Powered by DAX and models and things like that. Not traditional Excel. Let's not do that anymore, okay? And how this works out in practice, just to give you an idea, let's say I have a bunch of slicers across the top of that scorecard. And I'm the manager of area 1. You know, and so I click on area 1, or maybe it's already pre-clicked for me, okay? It's filtered to me like with row level security or something like that. And I get to see what all my overall metrics look like for my entire organization. But again, I can't fix that directly. I've got some direct reports. So these 3 people, let's say, are my direct reports. And when I go to have meetings with these people, I can click on each one of these, sort of drill down, say, oh, look, you're doing great over here, here, and here, but if you fix this over here, wow, that'd change everything. You know, we'll send you to the Caribbean for the President's Club, you know, at the end of the year. By the way, one of these scorecards I'm talking about does, in fact, decide who goes to the Caribbean at the end of the year. It's the beach assigner. And it's worked, okay? So I have those conversations with them, but then each of those people, well, they also have direct reports, don't they? Okay? This is a means of driving a clear message downward through your organization at concentric levels that makes a difference. It does the impossible. You know? It makes those thousands of decisions a day slightly better. It's magic. The concept of scorecarding is old, right? But it came out at a time, you know, it was hot, like the balanced scorecard book and all of that was hot at a time when the tools couldn't keep up. So like now we sort of think of this notion of scorecarding, it was a little bit yesterday, you know. No, we've never done scorecarding. We've actually never really done it right. It's a good time to do it. Scorecarding. All right. Knowing whether something helped or hurt. So the example I gave at the beginning, they made a change. You make a change, is it helping? Oh, by the way, let me go back to scorecards just for a moment, because I can't resist, okay? Like, this scorecard is also populated with fair metrics. And the slicers, that's an example of being subdivisible, right? These things do. It's important to not like do one at a time. Be paying attention to all 10. It's not like you're going to use all 10 all the time, but you're generally speaking going to be using more than one if you're doing it right. Does that make sense? All right, I'm glad I caught myself there. Click, click, click. Okay, forensics. So some examples of this, like there's a holiday promotion that we've been running every single year for as long as we can remember, maybe 20 years we've been running this promotion. Is it helping? It looks like it's helping because our numbers are bigger during the holidays. But yeah, okay, it's the holidays. Duh, right? How do you know whether it's helping? We've been hired by some clients who've been doing this forever, and you know, we come back and tell them, yeah, this promotion is killing you. It's killing you, and they thank us, and then they fire us. that happened. Cannibalistic underwear, some things you can't make up, right? We had an example of a client that thought that underwear, their decision to sell underwear was stealing sales from a more valuable profit margin category. It wasn't, but they thought so. You make a change to your website, okay, and the traffic number changes, positive or negative. You're like, that worked. I don't know. How about seasonality? Like in the US, like I think our website traffic at our company dips every April. And the best we can come up with is that it's like spring break, all right? It's not a huge dip, but we notice it every year, right? So if we made a change at the end of March and traffic went down, you know, we might go, ooh, better not do that again, right? When in reality, nothing changed. And furthermore, subdivisibility is again important because, you know, even the question of overall, is this helping or hurting, is really a bad question. It very well might be helping in certain subsegments of the business and killing you in others, and then that all averages out to some overall metric that doesn't match any single part of your business. Wouldn't it be good to know that? And I'm sure you have examples from your own business. I just mentioned that the benefits pile up, so we're going to move on. Freeing your valuable thinkers from spreadsheet debt service. So someone who's good at Excel, one of the worst things they can ever do for themselves is to build something that people really find valuable. Right? You know, because now that thing gets attached to your leg like a ball and chain, okay? And then you're like, okay, fine, I can drag that along with me. I got it. No big deal, right? But then you succeed again, right? And you get another one on the other leg. And they just keep piling up. And there's a point at which, I'm talking about traditional Excel spreadsheets here. I'm not talking about the new breed, okay? There's a point here where just pumping the data through your portfolio of spreadsheets now consumes basically your entire week, okay? And the managers, we've seen this, the managers of these people get really frustrated because when they hire, let's just say they hired Jimmy, right? Jimmy's, got all kinds of energy and spunk, and he's able to do lots of great things for them. And then it's like, oh, wow, so glad we hired Jimmy. He's so much better than those other Excel analysts that have been around for a few years, okay? And then Jimmy eventually hits his saturation point of success and is dragging his own portfolio of spreadsheets around, and now he can't do any new work either. And the manager goes, my people ruined Jimmy. Right? That's not what's going on. So we don't want that, okay? We want to be able to do things like schedule auto refresh, okay? So this is a screenshot from Power BI, scheduled auto refresh. This is a screenshot from Power Pivot for SharePoint, auto refresh. And this is a series of screenshots from our partner company, the Power On folks, who have a booth in the cafeteria. This is their refresh utility Power Update, which we use a lot. And auto refresh is just one example of freeing them from debt service with their own spreadsheet portfolio. Like just being able to subdivide, for instance, is a big deal because people are always asking for slightly different versions of the spreadsheet that they already built, which is impossible to do in traditional Excel, really. And it's a single click most of the time if you've done it right in the new tools. So it's not just auto refresh. Alerts and exceptions. You can set up thresholds, triggers, okay, to be notified only when certain things happen. It's a big deal. And you don't even have to say, like, hey, tell me if any one of our stores does this. It doesn't even have to be that coarse. Imagine if you have 250 different locations and, 1,000 different product lines. So 250,000 combinations of locations and product line, okay? Imagine scanning a report of 250,000 lines, just those combinations, to see if anything, funky is happening, okay? You're not going to do that. You're not even going to build that report, I hope. But you can actually deploy DAX formulas like they're robots that are scanning all of these different, intersections of your business. Lots of combinations, and seeing if any of them are jumping, upward or downward outside of their traditional averages in any sort of dramatic fashion. Because if that happens, you might want to get on it quickly. It could be a good thing that's happening. Like, whoa, what's happening out in that location with this particular product line? And oftentimes these alerts will tell you, they'll put you onto things that don't really matter. It's true. But every now and then they will absolutely trigger something. Like we have a horror story that we've heard, not from one of our clients, but from like a client of a client, that a hospital one time stopped billing in their entire surgery department. They stopped billing patients for anesthesia, which is less than half of the cost of surgery, but it's not like 1% of the cost of surgery either. And so for 6 months this went on, no bills were being sent for anesthesia, okay? Money was still coming in, so no one noticed, right? There was a report somewhere that was screaming, danger, Will Robinson, right? But no one was looking at it, right? But imagine if you got an alert in your inbox one day that said, did you know that anesthesia billing went to 0% yesterday? That would get your attention, wouldn't it? So, I mean, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of examples less dramatic than that where this is valuable, but it's amazing to me that that example exists, and I got to hear about it. That is awesome. All right, one version of the truth. We've heard this a million times, you know, with the capabilities from these tools, we can actually do it. You know, we can publish to a central location, a server. We can let people, you know, consume it basically anywhere. In their browser, on a mobile device, whatever. We can stop the arguing and fighting over whose Excel beats up whose Excel. One of the other common things is that when you have a difficult measurement problem, you outsource it to each of the individual departments to come up with their own numbers. They got to crunch their own numbers. And of course, everyone uses a different formula. Everyone uses a different methodology. And every meeting devolves into like, your number's wrong, my number's right. And that's not productive. Everyone will know where the latest is. They don't have to be constantly asking someone, hey, can you give me the latest? Can you give me the latest? It's in the same location it was yesterday. And it's auto-refreshed, so it's up to date. That's where the latest is. All right. Better questions is one of the things I talked about at the beginning. So let's imagine for a moment that this is some sad human being from the distant past of 2009 or yesterday. And they're saying, what was our sales number for last month? Like that's state of the art from beforehand, okay? What was our number? We really need to know our number. All right. Well, a slightly improved version of that question today could be something like this. So not so much what our number was, but was that up or down versus the previous month, you know? So it involves an extra calculation, calculating this month's number versus last month's number and seeing it as a percentage change. Okay, that's better. That's more useful. And then either someone else or that same person, maybe a little bit later, has another idea, which is, well, wait a second. Not did it go up or down. Did seasonally adjusted, price-adjusted sales go up or down? And then someone else goes, we know what, we can't spend sales. We spend margin. We can't spend revenue. Right? Margin's the thing we care about. So maybe we should focus on margin growth. Maybe not exclusively, but certainly in tandem. That would be a good thing to know, right? And then, oh boy, okay, the margin changed. How much of that was driven by changes in revenue versus changes in costs? We should break that down, you know, and see. It might be a different story. And then the next thought is, and that probably wasn't the same across all regions or product lines or categories or whatever you want to call it. So let's subdivide it and take a look. It might be telling very different stories in lots of different places. And then you get to, I got a great idea. Let's build a subdividable, one version of the truth, fair metric scorecard for the entire organization to drive improvement in that number rather than just finding out what the number is. This happens. This is what you want. It's what you strive for, is to get this kind of culture going. All right, advising and assisting. And again, I always jam too much into a single presentation, you know. So there's no repeating here, but let me hit you with a statement. Informing people is worthless. It's just worthless. That shouldn't be the goal, okay? Informing people doesn't help unless it translates into improved action. Improved action is the only thing we care about. We view information, you know, informing them as the prereq for that, of course, right? But we tend to inform them and stop. And that doesn't really get it done most of the time. So I'm encouraging you to think about things differently, that some large percentage of the work that you produce should be directly advising action. And alerts and exceptions is one example of that, like saying, hey, you should probably go look at this. It's an example of it, right? That report is empty unless something funky happens. That's great. Here's an example. I got asked by one client to improve the performance of a report. I said, this report's running really slow. This pivot table's running really slow. Can you take a look at it? And the first thing I said was, whoa, this is a 100,000 row pivot table. They're like, yeah. Like, who is looking at this, right? Like, you don't have a performance problem. You have a much bigger problem than that. I need a pivot table to make sense of your pivot table. Anyway, so The short version was this was the time card report that was being refreshed like every hour, and it was just showing people like when they like employees and their scheduled check-in times and actual clock-in times, and their managers were scanning this all day, every day, trying to find out if there was a store somewhere in the country that had no one showed up to work, and so they had an empty store not making any money. I'm like, oh my gosh, you do not need the time card report. That sits there like a slug saying, I don't care what you want to do, I'm the time card report. You need the empty store detector, okay? That lets you know when there's an empty store and tells you, you know, what this employee's work history looks like and who you could call to maybe guilt into taking their place, you know? That's what you want. And they said, oh no, our managers would never adapt to that now. We've already given them the time card report. I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. So that's the last one, okay? I like to talk about the difference between nouns and verbs. Most of the time we're building nouns. We're building the report, the sales report, the blah, blah, blah. If it starts with the word the and ends in a noun, right, you know, we're already a little bit off track. I like verbs. You know, can you put the suffix on something like, you know, ator? Is it a, you know, detector? You know, or if you're a fan of certain cartoons, you know, inator, an empty store detectinator, okay? Those are good things. And having a suite of purpose-built dashboards, whatever you want to call them, that each advise particular actions. Turn the knob left, turn the knob right, flip this switch, don't flip this switch, or leave them alone, right? I think it's better than having a single thing that tries to do everything and fails at all of them. So yeah, this is that's the end of it, okay? Again, if you want a PDF of it, drop us a note. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for coming.